what's the process by which you get into a creative zone and you actually produce the music?
For me, it was the spiritual element first of all. For me, so it was kind of like I wanted to write some music where healing frequencies were put into the music. Now you've got big healers like Jonathan Goldman, and they've got amazingly sort of like massive audiences for healing music, sound healing music. But it's very new age, and it's very specific, and it's very extreme. So it's a bit like a prescription. If you listen to it, it's purely to heal. Whereas I wanted to try and sort of incorporate some of that into modern music so that everybody got some benefit from it, because not everybody's ready for new age music. They don't want to know. So I was trying to bridge that gap in between modern music and the new age sector. So I basically started with the chakras. So I don't know if you're aware of the chakras, but there are certain chakra points in the body, and for each energy point, there is a frequency that matches it, supposedly. I mean, this is sort of looking back at research. So I would write a song. I'd pick a chakra point, decide on the frequency that's right for that point, which is like through looking at research papers and books and things like that. And then I'd write the song in that key, and I'd write the song about whatever that chakra stands for. So if it's like your third eye chakra, which the song that I did for for the film was that was used for the third eye. So basically, how do I explain it? If you want to open up the third eye, I would put that frequency that matches that third eye chakra into the song.
What is the third eye?
For me, it's the psychic senses. It's opening up the sixth sense, which is sort of in this area. So it's like part of the mind. It's part of the brain.
Is it something that everybody kind of has access to, or is that like, would you say, a spiritual gift that?
No, I believe everyone can sort of open that. I think we're all sort of like linked energy-wise, I believe, and I think it's kind of like you're tuning into a sort of universal energy, really. So it's open to everyone.
And with the healing frequencies, because that was going to come on to talk to you about that, is that something you've experienced? Have you experienced healing through the power of music and certain frequencies?
Yes, I mean, I only discovered healing frequencies and sound healing actually in my 40s, which I've been a spiritual person for a long, long time, but I can't believe I'd never heard of sound healing until in my 40s, which is quite strange, but I did. So for me, music's healing anyway. I think, a good piece of music is healing anyway, but if you specifically use certain frequencies to heal a certain part of your body, then I think it does have benefits.
You're not only entertaining people through music, but you're also helping bring healing to people.
Yes, absolutely. That I wanted to use the healing power of music anyway, because I think it is like a universal language, basically. But to put a frequency in there as well that will potentially open up certain areas or heal certain chakra points of the body and the mind and the soul. I just think it's an extra added benefit, basically. It's kind of an added extra, isn't it? It's a bonus. So I just wanted to sort of put the whole shebang in, instead of it just being a song for being a song's sake.
For you, it sounds like you can start with an actual part of the body that you want the music to speak to.
Yeah. So if I picked, say, let's carry on talking about the third eye. So I'd pick that frequency and that key and write the song in that key. And then I'd write sort of lyrics about what that sort of, that is linked to. Like Lemuria, which is the third eye chakra song. That is linked to ancient civilization. So it might open up past lives. You might get some recognition of that, in your own mind. It might open up your intuition, your psychic senses. So, and I say mind because, I think you've got to be open to it yourself. If you close it off and say it's not going to work for me, then it won't. I think you've got to have sort of some kind of open energy towards it, for it to actually have an effect as well. You can put a wall up because I think it's all about energy and thoughts are energy as well. So, but the third eye chakra is quite a strong one for a lot of people. We all use our intuition. We all get gut feelings about things. Some of us have dreams, premonitional dreams. You know, there are lots of intuitive things that we get, a hunch about something. You might have a feeling that somebody's going to call you and then they call you. Just everyday stuff. And if you can sort of develop that, and if that frequency brings that out, then I think it's a good thing. I think it can benefit people.
It's interesting going to the film Black Daruma. So we've known each other for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I think you watched our first film,
yes,
Playhouse, which is quite a different kind of film,
yeah.
gothic horror set in a castle.
It. Yeah.
And I think you enjoyed the film. I remember you responding really positively about that. And we shook up some conversations, and I mentioned that we were going to make another film that was quite different.
Yes.
And then you mentioned about working on various types of music, and I became interested in that. But it felt like, without even understanding entirely what Lemuria was about,
yes.
it fit this idea of this guy who is lost, and he's kind of listening to this kind of trance music, and he's trying to like regenerate himself physically and mentally.
Yes.
And it felt right to put that track on the film.
It's quite bizarre.
Strange.
It is quite bizarre. I mean, when you're talking about this, it's like you had a feeling about it. I had a feeling about it because when I was watching Playhouse initially, I had a bit of an experience, a spooky experience, and I wasn't on my own, so I had a witness to it as well.
Can you tell us what that experience was?
Yeah. Well, me and my partner at the time, it's my ex-partner now, but we were sat watching the film, and just at this point where the girl touches the wall, and it's a big sort of pinnacle point, isn't it, of the film, where it's quite, you know, everything reaches a bit of a crescendo and spooky stuff starts to happen. So as soon as it hit that point, I had like a curtain on the door, which was kind of like like a gypsy curtain. It's kind of like ribbons. It flowed, basically. It was like a sort of tassel curtain. And just as she touched the wall, the curtain just flipped up as if somebody had blown it. You know, like it just went whew, like that. And I didn't say anything at first. I carried on watching it. I noticed it. Because it didn't feel spooky. It just felt natural. But I thought, hang on a minute, did that just happen? He didn't say anything either. And I just said, after about 5 minutes, I carried on watching the film and I said, did you just see that? And he said, yeah, I did actually, yeah. And we were both a little bit kind of mesmerised by it, but kind of really shocked by it as well. And we were trying to rationalise it, I think, in our brains before we actually said anything about it.
Did you feel there was like a presence in your house at that moment, or was it something that was coming out of the film?
Do you know what's really strange is that at the time that happened, I was kind of... This all happened in a split second. I was watching the film, that bit happened. In my mind, I was thinking, I wonder if I'll ever work with the Watts brothers, with music and film, because that's something I'd love to do. And I imagined this song being in a film, because it's quite a cinematic sound. And I was thinking about that just at the time that curtain blew up. It was the most bizarre thing. And then we tried to recreate that, because I thought, well, it could be the speaker at the side of the TV. It could have been the air coming out, because there was a big bang when she put her hand on the wall.
It's a key moment in the film.
Yeah,
I mean, it's really
massive.
the whole film.
Yeah.
You know, it's about that moment.
I can't believe it, honestly. So I just thought, right, there must be some kind of air coming out of the telly or something, you know, there must be out the speaker. So I rewound it, played it again, nothing. The curtain was still. I then got my ex-partner to run out of the door and go to the outside door and shut the door, as if, you know, could we create a gush of wind? Was there somebody outside shutting the outside door as we were sat? Nothing, it didn't move. I couldn't get it to move. The only thing that would make it do that was if I went down to the curtain and blew really hard on it, and it did the same movement. It's just bizarre.
That's very strange.
Very strange. And I'm just glad I had a witness, to be honest, because I could have just been making this up, you know. But
I don't know
if
you're familiar with a film called Twin Peaks Fire Walk With Me.
No, I haven't seen it.
So
I remember Twin Peaks, yeah.
Fire Walk With Me is a film that is basically made after Twin Peaks, but it tells a story of before Twin Peaks. So it's the last 7 days of Laura Palmer.
Okay.
And I recently went to a screening locally at the Aberdale Picture House, which is here in Sheffield.
Yes, yeah.
And it's probably one of the last screenings they will ever have.
Oh, yeah.
And it was on 35mm film.
Mm-hmm.
And we're watching this film, Fire Walk With Me, and it's a very frightening film. In many ways, it's more frightening than most horror films.
Oh,
it's
really?
known as a sort of art film. It's David Lynch. It's strange.
Yes.
There's a moment in the film where Laura Palmer gets sort of possessed by this demon, and she says in a very demonic voice, "Fire Walk With Me," in a very terrifying voice. And just as she said that, the film melted in the projector.
Oh my God.
And the whole screening was cancelled and put off, and everyone was kind of mystified what the hell had happened.
Wow.
And I just thought that the timing of that was such as I'll never forget that.
Have you ever seen The Curse of the Omen?
Which one is that?
Well, it's actually just a documentary about all the horrific things that happened around the film.
I think I have seen that.
It's really, really scary.
Oh, I've got it on a DVD I bought from a charity shop. I think I have.
It's very scary, and it's quite unbelievable, but it apparently happened. So
Yeah.
But yeah, it did remind me when we talked about this film, and you told me about some of the things that happened around the filming of this as well, the Black Daruma film. I actually thought, oh my God, maybe we are dealing with a few dark forces.
There was a lot of stuff thrown at us during the film.
Yeah.
And, I've mentioned it in the conversations we've had. I mean,
absolutely.
It was very strange. What happened,
Yeah.
and there was a great atmosphere. In the film, and I think Richard.
Oh, it was amazing.
Created that character, and he put so much into creating that character of Ryan. I think he was drawing on a lot of stuff he'd been through in the past, feeling really lost in his 20s. And I went through a dark time with the film because it, partially had financed it pretty much ourselves.
Yeah.
In reaction to being conned by an investor who was going to invest quite a large amount of money in a film we were going to make, and then it didn't happen, and turned out she was bogus, and it was a bad time. So we thought, let's finance our own film and do something quite different to Playhouse. So there was a lot of energy and hope and expectation for making the film. But there was a point at which it was very confusing what we were making. And we felt very exposed, and it was in 8 days, and our uncle died mysteriously in the first night.
Oh wow.
But amazingly, I think once we started to put music to the film, I started to fall in love with it again.
Yes.
Because we did a test screening without music, and it just felt kind of flat.
Okay.
And it just felt like it was too big an ask for people to buy into this world that was very slow without all the normal editing. But once we put music onto it and included your music, it took on a whole different dimension.
Yeah.
And at this point, we're both very excited about it.
Yes.
And for people to see it, and we're on the brink now of people really starting to see it. And it's amazing that journey you go on.
Yeah.
When you first saw the film, I think it was at the Spirit of Independence festival.
It was, yeah.
What did you make of it? What was your response?
I thought it was amazing. It's one of the only films that I couldn't actually take my eyes off the screen, and I didn't want to miss a second of it. I didn't want it to end. I could have just watched it again and again, and I can't wait to see it again. It's just one of those films. It just blew me away. I think the way it was, obviously, the way it's been written, the way it was produced, it's quirky, it's funny, but it's scary. It's got so many elements to it. The storyline flows well. It's filmed in Sheffield as well. Obviously, being from Sheffield, that's quite nice to watch. But it just flows so well, the story, and yet it kind of grips you because it's got humour in it. It's not too deep and dark, but then you get the dark elements that when they are dark, they're really dark. So you go from one extreme of emotions to another with it. It's great. Absolutely loved it. I can't wait to see it again. I really can't.
Are you a fan of horror films in general?
Yeah.
Independent horror films?
Definitely. I'm a bit old school. I guess I come from sort of like, The Fog, Halloween, 1979 version. I like the old school sort of horror films, Poltergeist, that sort of thing. I'm more into spooks than blood and gore.
That's more of our kind of thing.
Yeah,
I'd say both
spooky.
Playhouse and Black Daruma in some ways are sort of supernatural, psychological horror films that contain space.
Yeah.
The haunted house.
Yeah.
In a sense. And that tends to be the way we move with our thinking creatively, which obviously resonates with you.
You captured it very well. Yeah, you captured it so well in this film. I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing.
I mean, the kind of wisdom on the street really with film distribution stuff is to try and reverse engineer things that are already working.
Yeah.
But we've always had a bit of a reaction against that, and we thought, well, we understand that, but in some ways, like, it's so hard to make a film, and you're kind of you're exposing yourself, and it's financially risky. If you're going to do all that stuff, why not do something that you really want to do, that you really believe in?
Yeah.
And try and come up with something that's original.
Yes.
And so, Black Daruma was very much like a kind of jump in the dark. It was like, well, we want to do something to do with doll horror. And classically, the doll is always in the film.
Yes.
It's always about, does the doll's eyes move at a certain point? Plot dicks, and there's a doll, and does it move? But we wanted a fresh way into it. And obviously, there's that kind of voyeurism and that POV element to it.
Yeah.
It was always like, will this work or will it not work? And it seems like you've responded really well to it, and you didn't know a lot about it. I mean, other than just, brief conversation, and we'd loved your music, and we thought your music would fit really well. But obviously, it resonated with you. Was there any moments in it? I know you've only seen it once, but any scenes in particular? Talk us through any bits of the film that you really like.
There were so many. It's hard to pinpoint because I mean, I liked the bit especially for the humour sort of element when they get a bit off their head and go into, and he falls into the river, and the way that was filmed, and you've got his face in the water. I thought that was amazing. It was so funny, but so wrong as well. It's kind of funny and wrong at the same time. I just the way it was filmed, just the perspective, the way it was filmed is just, it's hard to explain. And I think I don't want to give too much away either, because you don't want to tell people too much about it. But it's done in such a quirky way, and it's done in a clever way, that there's nothing like it. I've not seen anything like it at all.
I mean, at the heart of it, you've got somebody who's vulnerable in their life at a real down point, who becomes fixated on an object that they believe can really improve their life. Now, what are your views on, do you think that an inanimate object brought into a house could be enchanted? Do you think things can have a life of their own that are non-living, but maybe have a living presence within them? What's your view?
I think inanimate objects can actually have an energy attached to them. I don't think it's the actual object. I think they can bring an energy with it, personally. So I don't think it's the actual object that's the issue. I think it's what's attached to it, and it could be something that's been something that's passed down from a family member, or that's been in the house a long time. There could have been a lot of trauma around an object, but I think it's more to do with the actual energy that it's attracted and that's clinging on to that.
So I can remember with the research we were doing, looking at like the sort of top 10 haunted paintings in the world.
Yeah. Oh God.
I mean, I think I was even with Playhouse actually, because Playhouse involves a haunted painting.
Yeah.
But there's definitely a feeling around certain objects. I mean, the famous one is the Annabelle doll.
Yes.
Which is behind glass, where these things can happen. Now, I spoke to other people, certainly crew members and things, about these things when working on the film, who they don't believe at all that it's completely outside of their view of reality and the scientific worldview.
Yeah.
But I haven't really experienced that around objects, but I've experienced it around places. I remember going into an old croft to do some filming for a short film some years ago, and it was a dark room. In fact, one of the actors went into this dark room, and he came out and he said, "Look, I'm not given to this kind of thing, but there's a really bad feeling in that room."
Oh, yeah.
And I thought, well, I'll go and have a wander in. We weren't filming in there, but it was part of the house we were filming in. And as soon as I went in there, my hair was just like that. I thought there's a very angry feeling in this space. And I'll never forget that. And I absolutely believe there was something there that was unresolved. Something had happened in that farmhouse that was unresolved. Yeah. But of course, for a lot of people, they would either forget about that or take no interest in it again. For me, that's incredibly interesting. I'd love to know what the story is. And I tried to find it online earlier, but I can't remember where it is. Oh, wow. I mean, do you like this kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a very sort of spiritual, sensitive person anyway, so I do feel energies, and I do kind of pick up on if something's around, and that's been going on for quite a lot of years with me, so I'm super sensitive to that, I'd say. So, like some people, I think if you're not that sensitive and you block it out, you can actually block it out, unless it's a very strong energy that wants to get through. So I think you can block that out. But when you're sensitive to things, you feel things. I mean, I've had things happening in where I live at the moment. We've both had things, haven't we? So basically, things are moving. The other night, I've had a recent spate of things where if I'm talking about something, I'll say a certain phrase, and then within a second or two, the same phrase is said on the radio or on the TV. Now that's really weird, and I can't explain that. I don't know what's going on with that. I was talking about making a garlic soup. Now, I didn't expect to hear about garlic soup on BBC Radio 6, but that's what happened. I'd just been talking about garlic soup, and the next minute this DJ was talking about his old mum's recipe of garlic soup. It was just the weirdest thing. And it keeps happening on TV. We were watching a programme the other night about Whitby, I think, and I said, oh, it's a lovely place. And this guy went, it's a lovely place. It's almost like it was mimicking me. It was really strange. And
would you call that like synchronicity? Would you call it that?
I think it's synchronicity. I think it is kind of something psychically is linking up there. It's very strange. I mean, to be honest, I had that from being a child as well. I used to say things and then they'd say it on the TV. My mum would be like, yeah, have you seen this before? I said, no, honestly, I haven't seen it before. But it sounded like I had because it was just copying what I'd said. But then, after this latest thing, then we heard some pots moving in the kitchen, basically, like as if they would just put them down, but they'd been there about an hour or so, and they moved, and we heard it. We heard them clank, and when we looked, they looked to be in the similar position, but they had, they'd moved.
And do you know much about the history of the house, or do you know any understanding of what's going on? Are you curious to know about things like that?
I am. I don't know what was there before. They're not. How old are the buildings now? Probably about 50 years old or something like that. Are they 50? 50 years old, something like that. So I don't know what was there before then. And I don't know if it's just linked to the actual property that I live in, that, somebody is still hovering around there because they like to be there. Or it's just that there was something there before that was built, because they're not old buildings. So it's kind of very strange.
Do any of these... kind of experiences that you have, what you call them, sort of paranormal experiences, do they feed then into your music?
Yes,
or into your
to some degree.
Thinking?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm talking more about spiritual elements and emotions with the music rather than spooks, if that makes sense. But it all sort of goes hand in hand, I think. I think, your emotions are energy. I think spooks are energy. I think energy just links up in so many ways that it's all interlinked. So, I mean, I don't write about spirits as such, but I write about the energy that you get from emotional things. I mean, Railings, for instance, is kind of about emotional loss. So that's a song that I wrote that was linked to the heart chakra, and that's about emotional loss. And to me, there is an element of, because I've lost people that were important to me. So it's a very personal thing for me. But the song itself is actually meant to heal the heart rather than, it may bring up emotion, but it's meant to heal the heart, really. So there's a frequency in that links to the heart chakra that actually kind of is supposed to rebalance. Because when you're out of balance at any point of your body, if you put the frequency in that's meant to be for that area of the body, it's supposed to actually realign it and reset it so that you feel more balanced, basically.
In order to have that benefit, one, you say you have to be open to it, but do you need to listen to the music repeatedly, or will just once?
I think it would help. I think the more you listen to it, the more you'll get from it, and because the frequencies are so embedded, you might just hear them. If you listen carefully, you might just hear them, but they're meant to be sort of hidden. They're meant to be blended in. So
if you were using it in a sort of healing way, maybe on a loop, like meditating on it, or how would you interact with the music?
I think it's on a more sort of diluted level, because if you wanted to do it properly, like on a healing level, like say, for a certain illness or a certain emotional problem, I would put something like, a serious sound healer on with just a pure frequency, or binaurals. But with the music, it's kind of inbuilt in that. So it's not as pure, if you know what I mean, but it actually does have the benefit, as well as listening to the song. It's not just, how can I say, it's kind of like it's a double whammy. You're getting the benefit of the music, which evokes the emotions that you might be trying to heal, but you also get the frequencies coming in as well. And it's best listened to on the headphones, because you've got, for binaurals, you've got one left and one right frequency. But it wouldn't matter if you've got two speakers, it's fine. You'll still get the benefit, you know, either way. Because I think sound healing is about intention as well. It's not just about the frequency, it's about your intention and your energy that goes into that music as well. So if you mean good with it and you're putting it out there with that energy, I believe that would travel to other people.
Do you ever think that negative experiences, like experiences of horror or fear, can also be helpful to people? Like, I mean, we've had discussions about this. I don't know what your thoughts are on that. Well, I can tell you mine after, but it'd be good to hear what you think.
I think fear, it's a tough one, because I think fear it can be negative, it can be very negative fear, but if fear evokes a kind of power in you that makes you want to quash that fear and overcome things, then I think that turns into a positive. So fear itself is I don't think that's great if it's left as fear, but if you can turn that fear into something more positive, then I think it can really sort of, you know, help you.
I mean, one of the paradoxes of, for example, horror films is, why do people seemingly enjoy things that put them on edge? Or some people do, a lot of people, that's not for them, but some people enjoy that feeling of being on edge. Now, if I watch a film like Paranormal Activity,
yes,
and I'm on my own, it's more powerful than, of course, with anyone else.
Of course, yeah.
And I will be much more aware after a film like that of what's going on in the house. But weirdly, I enjoy that feeling. And part of it's because I feel really alive.
Yes.
I feel really awake.
Yeah.
In a way that if I watched a different genre film, I might not feel like that. And so it's a kind of, something happens in the psyche, or maybe in the spirit, when you watch those kind of films. Now, I don't think everyone's having that impact, but some of us do. And I think that's really interesting. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the adrenaline rush is a good thing. I think it can be a really good thing. I mean, it makes me feel quite magical. So it sounds a bit strange, but you know, if I'm frightened by something, as long as it's not too frightening, like I'm actually going to get murdered or something, if it's sort of like a sort of safe fear, I feel quite magical, and I feel more sort of like close to like the spiritual realm, if you believe in that sort of thing, or energies. So because it's the fight or flight mechanism, isn't it? It kind of makes you feel on edge and alert, and you actually pick up energy a lot easier, I think, if you've experienced something like that.
That's interesting. And you've worked for quite a long time in, is it mental health?
Yes. Yeah.
And have you found your like spiritual giftings helpful in terms of working in mental health? How does that feed into your work, not just as a musician, but in your day job, let's say? It's
a tricky one, because with mental health, you're taught that certain illnesses are, you know, it's all kind of treated with medication and therapy, and you're taught that certain illnesses are chemistry imbalances and things like that, which I'm sure they are. There is an element of that, but I do think there's a spiritual element as well because of my beliefs. But I can't really go around saying that in my job because it would be unprofessional. But I do believe that, I mean, a lot of the places that I've worked in, like forensic units, mental health units, are very dark. And I think there are a lot of dark energies in those places. And I've witnessed things that I feel were more dark energy based than psychiatric illness based. And even some of the consultants have actually had to agree that they think the same. They think that it doesn't quite fit in with the sort of description of what that psychiatric illness should be. It's kind of more like a haunting, or it's quite bizarre. But I can't say, you know, I can't really say a lot about it because I think as a professional I've got to remain professional.
I mean, I've heard a story that, like, you know, if there's a haunting locally, sometimes, you know, or somebody's having an experience of something bothering them at night and they don't know what it is, and the police are called. Yeah. Sometimes the police, they don't know what to do with that. So they actually, they sometimes contact a local deliverance minister. Yes. Who goes to the house to deal with that. Now, I never knew that happened. It was only because I was told by somebody who was involved in that kind of ministry, and I'd love to get them on this, on this channel to talk about that.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think that's really interesting where, a kind of secular organisation like the police overlaps with, a spiritual organisation like the church to actually help deal with reality. And I think a fuller picture of reality would involve these different dimensions, but for a lot of people, they don't bring those things together. Yeah. But I'm always interested in where they overlap. And of course, Black Daruma is this sense of there's a thin line between what's psychological and what's supernatural.
Yes.
And we play with that in the film. It's a very playful film, and there's black humour in it. And I think that's what's unsettling. Hopefully, anyway, that's what kind of runs through the film that's quite unsettling.
Yes.
Maybe some people can relate to that as a kind of energy that runs through that film.
Yeah, definitely. And I think some psychological. I think if you're psychologically a little bit disturbed yourself, then you can attract things in that aren't particularly positive as well. I do think there's an element, there's a sort of like an element of attraction to things like that. If you're feeling negative, I mean, for instance, if you have a bad day and you're feeling negative, how many bad things happen that day? You can test it out. You can test it out.
Kind of out of sync with things.
Yeah, and if you're thinking negative thoughts like, oh, I don't feel well today, oh, this is going to go wrong, I'm not looking forward to this and that, and you can guarantee that things will go wrong because of that negative thought. But if you start to think, if you turn it around and think positively, you might start to see things, actually turn around and be positive rather than... It'd be interesting to have an experiment, wouldn't it, with twins maybe, who, we're doing the same thing, thinking the same thoughts, but focus one on the positive thoughts and focus one on the negative thoughts and see what happened in their day. I'd love to see something like that.
That sounds really interesting. I mean, me and Toby, we've often discussed this at times of somebody who's a herbalist, did herbal medicine, talked to us about, I think it was their daughter who was trying to run a business, but they didn't have the energy of intent. And I said, well, what is the energy of intent? And he said, well, it's the absolute conviction in what you're doing is right and believing it. And we've often said when we, for example, with film investment, which is very difficult to get, and you have to really believe in the idea, that if you're not going in with the energy of intent, people can see that, and it's not going to happen. Yeah. It's almost like the battle is already fought before you go to battle. Yeah. And I think there's a lot in that. I think that's interesting. So a lot of it is... Yeah.
I think if you're not a genuine person, people can sniff it out, and I think if it's like with the music, if you're a genuine person, I want to help people with this. So, the intention is really good. So I'm hoping it will sort of go places because the intention is good, not because I want to just be on a stage. I want it to actually help people. So, and it flows, it's flowing. It's starting to flow. So it feels that it's the right thing to do. But I think if you write a song just to make a hit record, it might work for some people, but it's not very genuine, is it? And it doesn't kind of have a very nice energy about it. Or I don't want to name names, but there are certain musicians in the past, in the 80s, that made some awful songs just to make money. And yes, they made the money, but they're not respected as musicians. And I think, if you respect yourself and you respect what you're doing and you're genuine about what you're doing, I think it's good for the world. If
you're moving in the right relationship to what you're doing and your motivations are pure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And so where are you going now with your music? What are the next steps? What are the things you're working on?
Well, I'm still working on completing the Chakra sort of album, really, because every song that I've released has got a sort of chakra frequency built in. I've started using binaural beats as well, but that is still chakra based. So I've gone from pure frequency to binaural beats in the latest couple of songs, but it doesn't matter. It's the same. It does the same sort of thing. So that will continue. And then I'm not actually sure after that, to be fair. I mean, I've started writing with my partner. So he's quite a spiritual person as well. So we're trying to kind of carry on with that spiritual element, so that it's not just music for the sake of it being music. It's got a healing element to it as well as being good music to listen to. I think that's important.
And what I love about the music, and I'm trying to be analytical about it, because obviously at first you love it and you don't even think why.
Yeah.
Because a lot of it's without words, but it's the fusion of electronic, trance, lyrics, kind of ethereal kind of undertones. There's all these textures to the music.
Yes.
And I think it's like there is a spiritual quality to it. It's fabulous. There's so much to it.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I'm glad, because see, I came from a sort of guitar-based band background, really, and I think that's fine. That's great. But I think there's something about using synths and real instruments, of course, as well. But the different levels of frequencies that you can get is unbelievable compared to, like, say, a guitar or just a piano, or when you've got lots of different sounds, it's amazing. I mean, we've got like spiritual sounds. I've got a keyboard that is basically based on spiritual music, and it's amazing. It's a Korg, and you've got like the spiritual elements. You've got like instruments from different countries coming in. You've got sort of the Arabic scale creeping into it. There's all sorts of things like that, and I just think it's bringing a lot of sort of ancient things up to the surface as well. My music, I think, a lot of, healing frequencies were supposedly used a long, long time ago. Ancient civilizations supposedly used them, and it's hard to prove that. You can only go on what research that you've got. It's hard to prove it, but I can honestly believe that. Yeah, I think it's something that we've all got in us, that ability to heal with energy, and I think we've forgotten how to use it.
Well, thanks so much for, talking to us about all your music, and
no problem.
And are you open to more, horror film collaborations?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Anything to do with spooks and horror and anything psychic phenomenon, that sort of thing. I'm well into it. And musically, I'm just happy for it to. Thank you for choosing my song, for the film. It's amazing.
No, you're welcome, and I'm really hoping Black Daruma will give you some good publicity for your music, and more of an interest in what you're doing, because it's unusual. It's beyond just like, I'm a musician, I'm creating music. It's like you're actually helping people, and there's an intent behind it that's very interesting and very pure, and I think that can only attract momentum.
I hope so. Yeah, that's the intention. Yeah, that is the intention. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming in.